Welcome back to Market to the Mavens, the ultimate podcast for all things marketing, brought to you by Life in Motion. I'm your host, Tori, and I'm so excited to have you join us on this exciting marketing journey. With me, I have our marketing expert and co-host, Heather.
Hello.
I want to start off by saying a huge thank you to all of the amazing feedback we got from episode 1. This is such a passion project for us, and it feels really good to have a lot of people who want to hear from us and are supporting us. We have the best people surrounding us here at Life in Motion, and we're super grateful. We now also have Market to the Maven social media accounts on Instagram and TikTok. This is where you can find all of the behind the scenes, any updates on topics we're covering in earlier episodes, and even marketing news that we aren't able to cover on the podcast because there's just so much going on in our industry. So you can find those on our platforms at Market to the Mavens, just how it's spelled, like the podcast. So let's get into this week's marketing discussions. We're just going to jump right into our first topic of the day, and that is going to be about the insane podcast revenue growth that is outpacing the total digital market. So what that means is that basically podcast growth revenue is overtaking all other ad revenue spaces. So for example, other ad revenue spaces would be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of those social platforms. So I'm just going to go ahead and give the details and then we'll get right into it. Podcast ad revenue in the US grew 26% year over year in 2022 to reach $1.8 billion. The rate of growth far outpaces the total digital ad market, which was up by 11% year over year. So the IAB said increased macroeconomic pressures from the pandemic and things after the pandemic have not slowed down momentum for podcasters. The trade group upheld a sunny outlook for future growth. The report projects podcasting revenue will more than double in 2025, reaching more than $4 billion. So that's right now it's at 1.8 billion. For the first time since 2018, news programming is no longer the top revenue-generated content genre in podcasting. The channel is now led by sports, society, and culture and comedy programming, pointing its appeal to the diverse array of customer interests. So that's kind of the overview of that. What I really want to get into with Heather is, should more companies be doing podcasts as part of their marketing strategy?
So the question that you're asking is a little bit different than the data you just provided. And so essentially podcasting is replacing radio. And so the reason that ad spend, you said $4 billion and that's just in the US.
So it's 1.8 billion right now, but they're projecting by 2025 it's going to grow
That's
to
only the US.
Yes.
So in comparison to television, that's really low.
Okay.
So what they're saying is essentially this revenue is what is replacing advertising that was previously used on radio stations. People are not listening to radio stations, but they're still driving in cars. They're still listening to audio for different mediums. And what people are finding is there's a lot of podcasts that they're following, and then advertisers that are looking to get in front of markets are paying for that advertising in that area.
Okay, so let me reframe that question then. So should more companies be advertising on podcasts then?
Absolutely, because they have a captive audience and the audience is already bought into those mediums. And what's really great is podcasters really know who their audience is. And the individuals that are listening and subscribing to them, it's very high conversion when they are able to market to their desired. And I know I'm not saying that very well. I feel like I can say it better, but podcasters know their audience very well. When a company wants to go into that demographic, they are going to be able to get in front of a captive audience. So I think it's a great strategy. It also is a low price point, especially when you compare it to television.
Is it a low price point in comparison to social media platforms like Instagram?
So it's a different market.
Okay.
So social media typically is going to be kind of a cold market that you're advertising to, where podcast is a little bit more of a warmed up market. I don't even know that that's like the terminology that people would refer to it. However, when you have advertisers that align with your brand, if a podcaster chooses the right advertisers, it's going to go well. And so you are going to have better conversion, especially if there's repetitive opportunities.
Can you give an example of, for example, there's a sports podcast. What company would you recommend to advertise on that podcast?
Because I'm thinking Dave Ramsey, I'm thinking Ben Shapiro, I'm thinking Joe Rogan.
Okay, so let me ask this question then. What company would you recommend advertises on Joe Rogan's podcast?
He has a very broad audience. However, his audience, because the way that he crafts his podcasts are more kind of an entertainment swing. I would think that anything entertainment related, I think Doritos would be great because, like, think of Super Bowl advertisers. A lot of those same advertisers would be great on Joe Rogan. So, like I said, Doritos or Bud Light, like we talked about, or he's not super conservative, but he does have a bend of conservative. But it's very entertainment driven. So that would be somebody that's really good. So if you're on the other side with Ben Shapiro, he's very conservative. Any brands that are leaning towards being conservative, that would be an area that advertisers would want to get in front of. I mean, there's a lot of, who was the other one that I said? I'm trying to remember.
You said Dave Ramsey.
So Dave Ramsey,
That's a financial podcast.
it is anything financial. I think that would be family, very family oriented. He has a very strong female audience. So I would think young moms, anything that's going to potentially be young moms.
That's a really good point. I know a ton. So Dave Ramsey has a social media campaign that he runs that is basically, I paid off this amount in debt, like on a sign.
Yeah.
And they post it and they tag Dave Ramsey and he'll like repost those. And they're all either families or like young moms.
Yeah. So he definitely knows his audience. And it's really easy to go out and get advertisers when you know your audience and you're able to provide those numbers. What's really interesting, and I feel like this isn't talked enough about, is there's a new market in what they call micro influencers.
Yeah.
But podcasts have micro influencers too, that people are receiving and have a lot of subscribers that you could get in for nominal fees to be able to get in front of your audience. And so there's another example I love to use. So there is a local company here that is in South Lake, Texas, and they have a magazine. And magazines don't typically do really well. However, this magazine really supports the high school in South Lake, which has, I think their senior class is like 4,000 students.
Yeah.
And so because there are so many features on the high school, a lot of parents are involved in that magazine and they read that magazine and they also subscribe to their email. And I heard data that there was, they had 3,000 subscribers to their email newsletter list that are engaged every single month. They do a great job of collecting their data and sharing that to advertisers. And they are selling little tiny spots that are like 1 by 1 on their newsletter, 1 inch by 1 inch on their newsletter. That is anywhere from $25 to $600 per month. That's only going out to 3,000 people. And that's a micro influencer. And so if you can find somebody that has a good podcast, somebody that you feel is aligning with the audience that you want to be in front of, you could get in for $25 an episode and your brand could be in front of those people that are already engaged. So I think it's a really smart way to get really good ROI from a small amount of advertising dollars.
What do you think about paying advertising dollars to be like a guest on a podcast?
So if you're trying to build your brand and you're trying to get name recognition, then I think it's a great investment. But the thing is it isn't like a one shot. Like you should be on a press tour. You should be on multiple ones in a short amount of time. And the more consistency that you have and more recognition that you have in a short amount of time, number one, you're going to be able to advertise that you're on those and there's repetition behind that, but also your name is going to be probably in front of the same people multiple times because there's a good opportunity that they're listening to multiple podcasts. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
But I say do your research. Also, this is a great tip. If you are considering going on a podcast, what I would recommend that you do is number one, look at their number of subscribers.
Yeah.
on all of the platforms. So whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but then go and look at how they're promoting it on social media. And when I say how they're promoting it on social media, a lot of times people will go and look at the activity, but they're not looking at how many likes are actually on those posts. And you can tell immediately if somebody is actually putting money behind those posts. And you definitely have to put money behind those posts on social media in order to be able to drive traffic. So I would make sure that the post is going to be a sponsored post. When you're going to, if you're paying to be on a podcast, this should be a part of the negotiation. You want to make sure that the post that they put out of your podcast to their audience is a sponsored post, that they're going to put money behind it, that they're going to email it out to their email list as well. And I would just make sure that those are things that are already written into any kind of agreement that you have with them.
Yeah, so you also recommend getting some kind of contract written up before you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be, lawyer written, but at least there needs to be some kind of an agreement that both parties understand what was meant to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else that you think was necessary to touch on this podcast, ad revenue?
I just really think that people should just start honing their crafts. And, it's really interesting because people don't recognize the opportunity of converting their audience as well. And I think because I'm a marketing company, I think it's super important to say this, that if you are spending a lot of time on a podcast, you should have a good website. And in that website, you should be collecting email addresses. Because it's one thing to have subscribers, but at the end of the day, your business value is in the contacts that you actually have. And so I would highly encourage people that are doing podcasts to drive people to your website, drive people to sign up for your emails newsletter, drive people to your social media, including YouTube, and encourage them to subscribe. Because having that record of people not just listens, but actual like call to actions is really how you're going to be able to quantify any future guests that come on your podcast or any advertisers that you will be able to go out to.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I just want to touch on this really quickly. When the TikTok potentially being banned was coming up, a lot of people were going on and asking people to sign up for an email list at that point. But if you're more proactive while you are, because you're going to lose people along the way. And so if you can keep a touch point with that with an email list, I think that's super, super valuable.
So if you want to hear one of the most brilliant strategies I ever saw was J-Lo. She actually announced her marriage, her wedding, her everything came through her email. Did not go to social media. And in fact, all of her subscribers are the first to get any of that personal information. And so I think from a celebrity standpoint, that's a brilliant strategy because number one, you control the narrative when information is going out. And then the people have a reason to sign up for that. And I actually signed up for it and I was just curious like how she would use it. I haven't had any advertisements sent to me, which I found that to be a very responsible way. Like the content that I'm getting for that sign up is ethical in that she didn't just create a list and sell that list.
Yeah.
And so I found that to be important. So I think, again, there's a lot of monetary value behind it. The Kardashians were another one that did that early on. They actually tried to have an app and they've done email lists where they have exclusivity with sending out content and paid advertising. They didn't do it the same way that JLo did.
Yeah.
But she really tied in her personal life with it. And I just found that to be very smart from a business standpoint and a PR standpoint.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our next topic that I'm really excited about, and I'm gonna try to say this all with a straight face because it's really hard to talk about this without laughing a little bit. So,
We laugh a lot.
so Oscar Mayer is rebranding their Wiener Mobile for the first time since 1936.
We call it the Wiener wagon.
The Wiener wagon. They said the Wiener Mobile.
Can I tell a story?
Yeah.
Okay. So I used to work at Costco and we used to have a weenie wagon inside the store.
Oh
That
no,
we
I
had-
know where this is going.
We had to take it outside in order to be able to like get the hot dogs and everything. And we have to haul it back inside every time. So I'm not going to go too much into it. But I used to work at a weenie wagon.
You worked at the Weenie Wagon at Costco?
At Costco, I did.
don't they have those at Home Depot too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
I
so
was a high paid weenie wagon attendant.
maybe you could get a job with the new
Yeah, I
weenie
don't think so.
mobile.
I think I'd rather own one than work one again.
If you came home with the weenie mobile, I would lose it.
Where did we see one? We saw one recently on the side of the road. Where were we driving?
We were driving through Utah.
Yeah, I was with you.
Oh my gosh, that's right. We've seen it. So anyway, sorry.
Anyways,
Squirrel.
okay. So Oscar Mayer is rebranding its signature hot dog shaped motor vehicle from the Wiener mobile, the Wiener wagon, to the Frank mobile.
Interesting.
It's a little sad, but I think they have some good marketing strategies to go with it, and I'll get into that. And I'm really interested to hear your feedback. So, this is the first change of the Wienermobile since the debut in 1936. The Kraft Heinz marketers said the overhaul promotes all beef Frank products, but the reason they're going for the change is because they're trying to go more of a natural, healthy route. So, changes also affect Oscar Mayer Wiener's whistle, which are now Frank whistles, and hot dogger drivers who will be referred to as Frankfurters. Also, part of the rollout, Frank Mobiles will dole out coupons for free pack of hot dogs to consumers who have Frank in their name. And so they made all this change before summer because they want to roll all of this out for summer. So they are calling that whole campaign Franks for Frank. So, with all of that now on the table for you, do you think that this is a good move for Oscar Mayer making these updates? And you don't have to agree with the whole thing, but are there parts that are good and others that they probably missed the mark on a little bit?
So I do think changing it from Wieners to Franks actually infers a higher quality product.
Okay.
So I do think that's smart. I feel like they're kind of overreaching, I feel like they're doing too much.
Yeah.
Like I understand the mobile, I understand the whistles, I understand, but the Franks for Frank, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think it sounds to me like somebody is probably trying to put together some kind of a social media organic messaging, kind of like the ALS.
Oh yeah,
challenge. I think that the Franks for Franks is probably what they're trying to do. And I don't think it's necessary. I think that there's other things that they can do to make it go viral and be more organic. So I just think they're taking on too much. I do think it's really interesting that they are renaming it to actually bring it back. There's going to be it's almost like an awareness campaign.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a great strategy, but also the change in the name, like I said, I really think that infers that it's a higher quality meat and that it's actually beef instead of just, the bad stuff that they talk about that nobody knows what's actually in
Hot dogs.
hot dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really want to touch on this subject, not really to talk about Oscar Mayer. I kind of want to go into insight on when it is a good time to rebrand your company. How often, what are the circumstances? Should you go for a total rebrand or just, a tune-up situation? So I kind of want your insight on that.
So you need to be very careful about rebranding. I will give you an example. We were involved with rebranding a medical practice because they were the practice that treated the Ebola patient. And so we didn't change their name, but we changed their look and just kind of gave them a new vibe. And even though that was a very difficult situation to be in, I think that it was a morale boosting for the company and the team, and it landed very well. Gave them something to focus on that was positive. So that was a great reason and opportunity. If there's some kind of a scandal, if there's some kind of a change that is negatively impacting the brand, then I think definitely that's the time to rebrand. I think sometimes companies, I'm going to say this out loud. Sometimes marketing companies, for their own benefit, recommend that somebody rebrand.
Yeah.
And that is not okay. So, perfect example is there was a company that has been in business since 1954, and it's a pest control company. and they were contacted to rebrand because it's been a long time, or you're outdated, or you're old. And the truth of the matter is that in their industry and in the area that they are located, in the area that they service, that longevity is very unique to their brand. And so their logo encompasses that. I mean, you can freshen it up, tighten it up, crisp it up, but changing the overall branding just to change the overall branding because you're outdated doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think that sometimes you also are potentially going in a new direction where you are servicing a different area of the market, or if you are potentially wanting to elevate your brand, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think there has to be a good reason behind it rather
Yeah.
than just we were advised by somebody to change it.
Right. Like sometimes you're not even thinking that you just want to market your company
Yeah.
digitally or whatever it is. And then the company comes in and they want to completely redo all your branding. And it's just important to maybe get a second opinion on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like when you go to the doctor and they diagnose you, you always want to get a second opinion on that just in case. I think taking the cautionary steps to do that in marketing is a good idea.
So the other time I think to rebrand is if you've never actually given clarity to your brand, if you in your brand story and other things like that, or if your brand is too localized. We are in Texas.
Yeah.
And if we are wanting to branch out, maybe having the name Texas is not in the name of our company, which doesn't apply to us, but that would be another reason to potentially move on to a new market. We work a lot with the medical fields. And so oftentimes doctors will have their name on the practice. And if you are wanting to elevate yourself out of being the name of the company, whether it's medical or any other industry, that's a great time to rebrand. We've done that several times for our clients too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's great. I'm glad I got through that.
Yeah.
It was sketchy there. All right, so we're going to move into our last topic of the day. So we're going to talk about the tech sector layoffs, and I want to touch on what that means for business owners and also what that means for employees in the industry moving forward if they have been laid off. So let me give some details. The tech industry increased its layoffs by 649% in 2022, which is the highest since the dot-com bubble, which do you know what that is?
Of course.
I don't know what that is.
So the dot-com bubble was 1998 and 1999. There were a lot of companies that were web-based companies that were going public. And so they were publicly traded companies. And a lot of people were jumping on that because the internet was still really new. And what happened was a lot of money went into it. And then all of a sudden, the consumer market around 2000 got really nervous and saying, is this even a real business because it's only online? And so a lot of consumers got scared and they rushed out of the stock. And so the stocks for all what they refer to as .com stocks crashed,
Okay.
but they came back.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Of course.
But there was a huge crash. I mean, it was in the level of 2008 for the housing crash. It
Okay.
was huge.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's just kind of a side note
Yeah.
on it. I just think a lot of people in my generation aren't going to know what that is.
And it's fascinating because you guys, it's so funny actually. Dad and I watch a lot of these TikToks about somebody asked a question, and this is relevant. Somebody asked a question of who let Gen X off the hook,
Mhm.
And so then there were people that were stitching in TikTok, and they were like, we've been around longer than Google. And the fact that that's like news to them is
Yeah.
hilarious.
They're like, there's people that are
Like,
that
hadn't
have
thought of
been
that.
around
Like, Google's been
longer.
around my whole life. What do you mean you
Yeah.
were alive when it wasn't around? How did you get anywhere? you know?
Right. How did you not know the answer to every single question as in like 5 seconds?
So to think that the stock market consisted of companies that were not web-based.
Yeah.
Can you even imagine?
Yeah. It's like, so
You had to have a brick and mortar.
we're kind of getting a tangent, but a little side tangent. We went to Ross yesterday and there was a chair I really loved, but I couldn't find one that was matching. And so I went on ross.com and they don't have e-commerce. Well, they're so irrelevant. They're irrelevant. Ross doesn't have because their business model doesn't really play to an
Local.
e-commerce.
Local.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyways, so according to the Challenger report, more tech employees were laid off in 2022 than 2020 and 2021 combined. So that means that more people were laid off in 2022 than during the pandemic,
Yes.
which makes sense because a lot of people just went and worked from home when the pandemic hit
Well-
in the tech sector.
No, well, yeah, that's part of it, but the other part is that PPP money was introduced
Yeah.
in 2020, like April of 2020. Businesses were provided money by the government in order to keep them employed.
Right. And I'm kind of going to get into a little bit of like why. So, the overall labor sector appeared strong in 2022 and 2023, but the tech sector laid off tend to be the most visible because the tech giants have many employees. A small percentage of layoffs still translate to thousands of people losing their job. Even after the dot-com bubble, the tech industry has been resilient to economic challenges due to its size and growing presence of personal and business use. So I kind of want to go through the big companies that did major layoffs.
Okay.
And what those numbers are. So these are layoffs as of April of 2023. So Amazon has laid off 27,150 employees, and they're the largest out of all of them. Meta has laid off 21,000 people, which we did know about, that they had major layoffs, and it's not really a coincidence that as soon as they did those layoffs, we started having a lot of issues with Facebook business.
So here is to Meta specifically, what is going on is they had overhired, and we're seeing that all over the place. There are reports out there right now of Meta employees who say that they were hired and they would sit at their desk for 8 hours with nothing to do. So it was an infrastructure, a management thing, and I'm not surprised about those layoffs. So the other thing is Amazon was doing very well during the pandemic when they were ordering, and now people are out shopping and they're wanting to be out a little bit more, but also they have been working on their logistics and their AI for a very long time. I think this is going to get worse.
For Amazon specifically?
All layoffs. I think that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because even your brother, who is 21 years old, who is going into ministry, is worried about layoffs of people because of AI.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that I really believe that when industry shifts happen like this, there's new opportunities.
Right.
And if people are able to see this as a positive, that there are new opportunities, then they become more of a visionary, like we've talked about, where they're going to go out and they're going to try and create things.
Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple more. So Google had 12,000 layoffs, Microsoft had 10,000, Philips had 10,000, other big names, Salesforce had 8,000, Twitter had 3,940. So those are kind of the major companies that have had major layoffs. And they also said that a big factor of this was the inflation in the economy also, and now people are expecting higher pay. So higher level positions are expecting higher level pay. So to do that, they have to then lay off lower level positions.
What's really going on is that companies are having a harder time getting a hold of money. VCs are also getting a little bit skittish. And this is something that other people in the industry are talking about, is that there are upper level VCs that would just fund a company pre-revenue, give them $1 million, and every person that's sitting there in their company, they're able to work full time and get a full-time check. That's not the way that back in the dot-com era that we're talking about, people were working for free just to be able to have the opportunity to be able to try and create something. The shift changed where now people want to work for a startup because a VC is funding them and it's going to be really cool, and I want to be Microsoft. But Microsoft didn't start that way.
Yeah.
Twitter didn't start that way.
Right.
And so I feel like the market is correcting.
Yeah.
And I think that people need to have a little bit more skin in the game, and they can't just be sitting back thinking that they're going to get paid for a startup. Like if you want to be a part of a startup like Steve Jobs, work in the garage.
Yeah.
Like I think they need to bootstrap things more.
I heard something today. It was sacrifice now so you don't have to sacrifice later. And I don't know, that really stuck with me. Or it was pay now so you can pay any price later.
Yeah.
And so I think those things really stuck with me because I think it is you need to have expectations of if you're going to be with a smaller company that's a startup that you really believe is going to blow up, you're not going to go into that company getting the same pay or the same benefits that you are at working corporate.
So I think this is such a great correction because really what it is our society has become such a instant gratification society.
Yeah.
So people are graduating college and they think that they should be making the same money that their parents are making.
Yeah.
And the reality is that their parents are 20, 30 years ahead of them, maybe even more than that. And they have had to make a lot of sacrifices. And I will tell you from my own experience, I appreciate so much more what I have now because I sacrificed so much in the beginning.
Yeah. So I want to go into what is your advice for people in the industry that have recently been laid off? Where should they go moving forward? What should their mindset be? What are some like tips and tricks from someone who's personally hiring right now?
So the first thing that you should do is definitely be on LinkedIn. Make sure that your resume is stellar on that you are networking,
Yeah.
that you are looking at jobs that are posted. The truth of the matter, this is what I think they should do. I think when you are out of a job, you have such an incredible opportunity to actually chase your dream because you're already in a position where you need to find a job. Why not go somewhere that you really want to go? What skills do you need? What grants are available for you to be able to learn new skills? I would really encourage people to be very intentional and thoughtful of what do they want to do, and then go out and find a way to get themselves in front of that, even if that means interning again, even if that means just offering your skills or try something new. I think that's a scary situation to be in sometimes. And I know that I probably sound like I'm not being very sensitive or realistic, but that's really, truly the way that I believe is that they can really be intentional of the skills and the type of job that they want and almost have the luxury of being able to start over again.
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on the social media, digital marketing side of it, because that's where I'm most knowledgeable about, and that's really the only part of the industry that I can touch on. But if you're wanting to work in social media or digital advertising in any way, because digital advertising now is social media,
Right.
whether you like it or not, really work on putting together your social media.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like put together marketing yourself.
Yes.
Creating videos, honestly being like a content creator, but more in a professional way of showing what your skills are and showing like, hey, I can work in digital advertising because my first thing I'm going to do if I'm looking to hire someone on my side of the company is go look at their personal social media. It used to be to dig and make sure that you are professional, but now it's like, do you really have the skills to work in digital marketing?
Yeah.
And so that would just be my number one recommendation for people.
Have a body of work.
Yeah.
Show examples of what you can do.
Yep.
And then also, if there's brands that you like, make commercials for them and put it on your own social media. All you're doing is advertising for them.
Right.
But you're showing your ability to be able to promote their brand.
Correct. Yep. Even like your favorite brands like Nike.
Yeah.
Or Lululemon.
Yeah.
And honestly, like if that's your passion, you can have a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely.
So I kind of want to change directions now and go into how these layoffs are going to affect businesses in our industry.
Yeah, I think AI is really drastically changing our industry right now. And I think that it's just going to compound. And the reason that I say that is because I think people are looking at AI as a way to shortcut work, especially marketing agencies. They're thinking, I see this advertised all over the place. I can now do in 15 minutes what took 10 hours before. There's no talk of quality there.
Yeah.
There's no talk of results there.
Yeah.
All they're talking about is the fact that they can make more money doing less.
Yeah.
And if they have that kind of mindset, they're not going to be in business very long. I think it's incredibly important to put your customers first.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest concerns that I see in our industry. But people are going, and when I say people, businesses that are paying marketing companies are going to begin to demand more. And I think that's great for our industry. I think they're going to be demanding results and ROI and being able to be shown that. Where previously our industry was kind of unknown and people were saying, I don't know how many times have we heard, I don't know what I'm paying for.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm getting. I don't know. We hear that all the time. And at the end of the day, marketing companies are responsible for providing an ROI and showing those results, and that the money that is being paid to them should be generating money.
Right.
Yeah. And that's something that our company has always been extremely focused on. So I find this change exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on with the layoffs?
So if we want to talk about how the layoffs are going to be flooding the market with talent, I would say that.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of individuals that are in tech sectors that have insider knowledge and experience that are being laid off. I think they could position themselves as a niche market where they could, I'm an ex-employee at Meta and I can run your ads for Meta and I can get better results than anybody because I worked on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge value to a small business.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think that they really need to be trying to use their skills to not try and do everything, but maybe be more niche. I think that that could be a great example. But I also think that agencies like ourselves are going to be very particular, and we have a lot more people to interview and a lot more to choose from.
Which is a change from
Yeah.
a year and a half ago where we couldn't hire
Yeah.
because there wasn't enough in the workforce.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that has always been a challenge whenever we have hired in particularly is I am not a huge fan of bringing somebody in that was very seasoned because there are a lot of things that I have to untrain.
Yeah.
Preconceived ideas or the way that they did things at another agency. So that would be another tip that I would really have is somebody that is leaving another agency or another tech job to really not try to go in there to impress and tell them what they used to do, but really focus on learning that business's goals and positioning yourself in the way that you're going to be able to be the solution for them and that you want to learn and you want to collaborate and you want to do it the way they want to do it. And your knowledge is personal for you, but the communication should be about that business.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, so that is all that I have for today's episode.
Good
So
job.
it was a good one.
It was. Good job.
I'm glad I got through that second.
That was funny. I think we need to laugh.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us today on Market to the Mavens. We covered some really interesting topics today, including podcast ad revenue growth, the rebrand of the Oscar Mayer Wiener Mobile. What did you call it? The Wiener...
Weenie wagon.
Weenie wagon.
Yes.
And major tech sector layoffs. Remember that staying informed about the latest marketing trends and development is crucial to staying ahead of this ever-evolving industry. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or we are also on YouTube. Follow us on our social media to stay connected. We'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. You can shoot us a DM on any of our social media platforms. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time, keep shining like the marketing mavens you are. This is Tori.
And Heather.
Signing off.